So maybe Illinois won't be going to the Big Ten championship game after all. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, let's hear it. Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Illini. We're doing this live, post-game. The game just ended moments ago. It was a 38-9 victory for the Oregon Ducks, and that score is about right. It wasn't very close to begin with. Oregon scored on 5 of their first 6 possessions. You kind of saw what the difference is between where Oregon's at and where Illinois is at. And before I get into it, today's episode, this live episode, is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Again, we're doing this live, so I want to hear your comments. I'll get to them momentarily. While you're here, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't before. I do this every game. I do this for football, and starting tomorrow, I'll be doing this for basketball too. Just providing post-game, quick recap, rapid reaction. Not going to be able to listen to the post-game press conferences, but I'll save that episode for Monday. Today, I'm here to talk about Oregon versus Illinois. And all I can do is kind of think back to Brad Underwood during this offseason. I think it was his first press conference where he met with the media and he talked about that Elite Eight game where obviously UConn had the 30-0 run, and walking off the court, Brad Underwood's like, that's the best team in the country. And he made a mention that he told his coaches that we're a good basketball team, but that's what a national contender looks like. And that's what we need to eventually be. And I feel like that's kind of what today was clearly an example of. I know this because my DMs, my mentions on Twitter are going down in flames right now with a lot of upset Illini fans. And I understand where you're coming from. But for those of you who are my everydayers, and if you are, please let me know in the chat. Let the other folks know who's with me every single day. I'm seeing the positives too today. I'm not saying today in any sort of way was a good game. Let me get that out in the open. Today was a very bad loss. One that I was hopeful. Did I think we were going to win? No, but after seeing Oregon on tape the last couple of weeks, I knew they were good. But they're really, really good. Oregon might honestly be the best team in the country, both on the offensive side and on the defensive side. The speed that they have was absolutely noticeable, especially in that first half. Outside that first drive where Aaron Henry just, I think we're all puzzled with some of his play calling. A lot of the plays that Oregon made was just kind of their wide receivers were a half second faster than our defensive backs. Now, look, Illinois is a very well-coached team, and every analyst, every insider I talk to post-game, because after the game, I usually like to reach out to other insiders of the opposing team and try to get feedback of what the viewpoint of Illinois is from a different perspective, if that makes sense. And the consensus is always you guys are very disciplined, very well-coached. Your cornerbacks put hands on people and they come down. They get tackled. And that was not the case today. Today we picked a bad day, arguably bad day. And I'm going to get to this later. And it's going to make some of you guys upset. And I totally get it. But you have to understand, like I always tried to look at big picture. And I'm continuing to look at the big picture, whether, Illini fans want to today or whether they want to or not. I get it. And I know the chat, which is already lighting up. You guys have your thoughts. But this game was house money. No one really predicted us to win. I think one of the analytics I had is 8% in winning this game. Now, that first half, do I wish we had competed more? Of course I do. Was this the game for Luke Altmyer to have his worst game of the season? Not if we were going to win. But I'd rather have Luke Altmyer have his worst game of the season against Oregon at Oregon. Minnesota, I don't even know what the score is right now. Maybe someone can look it up for me. They were drubbing Rutgers right now. And that's who we play next week in a game that genuinely does matter. Look, I know you guys don't like it, but I'm not giving up on that dream of 10-2. We're at home on Saturday, and I still think that we'll probably be favored in that game against Minnesota. This game against Oregon, again, it's hard. If you focus on the second half, sure. I would say that was a positive. This team didn't give up. This team continued to try to play. Sure, Luke Altmyer had a couple interceptions, but they had no choice but to be kind of aggressive in that second half. Now, Luke's had 2 bad games in a row. Let's be honest here. At least throwing the ball. And rushing the ball this time, I feel like he's starting to second guess himself again. And that's going to be something to monitor. But I say that the last 2 games were against a Michigan defense, which is very good, and an Oregon defense, which is elite. And so I'm not at the point yet where I'm concerned, but let's be honest. It's time to monitor. You guys know I'm a big Altmyer guy. I've been a big Altmyer guy all year long. Not year long. I'm talking about off season. I really think the national narrative on him was unfair. But if I'm willing to say that, then I need to be honest and say what I've watched on film the last 2 days or last 2 games isn't very good. I feel like he missed a lot of passes out there today, just whether they're way off or just maybe a foot or 2, one way or the other, that could have been touchdowns. We all saw, I believe it was the Malik Elzy play where he was wide open and Luke just didn't make the throw. And that's what kind of reminded me of last year, because that was kind of his little weak point. Now, granted, Austin is an intimidating place. I have a buddy who watched the game there, and he's been to probably 24 college stadiums, and he said that atmosphere that he was at right now was the loudest that he's ever been at. And so when you play in that sort of environment, against that type of team, maybe I can be somewhat understanding of what happened. Am I happy about it? Of course not. This was in no way ideal. I really wish we had put up more of a fight. But 6-2 is still 6-2. Last couple of weeks, I've said a win is a win is a win, right? For today, I guess my only mantra is going to be this loss only counts as one loss. I know a lot of people are going to be upset, and understandably, especially that first half. Aaron Henry just didn't have a very good one, but a lot of teams don't have a very good half against a team like Oregon. But what we can do now is sit here, enjoy the rest of your evening, get your emotions out, and then it's time to focus on Minnesota next week. Because Minnesota looks like they've turned things around now. I believe they're at 3 wins in a row with this one against Maryland. That game truly does matter. I came into it and I said 10-2 still gets you in the conversation for a college football playoff spot. And I know what you guys are saying. What's the point if we get embarrassed like that? There is a point. 10-2, I'm not saying, against other folks were trying to correct me saying, well, 10-2 doesn't guarantee you. I'm not saying it guarantees us. What I'm saying is it puts you in the conversation. Going 9-3, you're not in that conversation. At 10-2, what you're looking at is worst case, you're playing in a January bowl. And double digits wins is going to help with recruiting. And I think what we all saw on the field today That's what we need help with. And that's what I'm going to address right after this. I talked about this early in the season, that if there's one thing that I wish Brett Bielema and the staff could improve on is bringing in the playmakers. We need more 4-star talent on this team. We need to at least be in the conversation for a single 5-star talent. I want to see us compete. And games like today are kind of an example of why. Illinois, despite what many people might think, is a good football team. They are a team that may not be as talented as the ones that they're playing up against most of the time, but we're coached well enough, and these players believe enough that we're able to beat teams at our level and below, and even a level higher. Teams like Oregon, who are not only talented, but super well coached, Illinois just can't compete in that realm. Yeah, you kind of saw, again, an example of what we need to do to reach that level. And in order for that to happen is all these big recruiting weekends we've had over the last month or so, we need to get some wins out of that. We need to get some of those talented players interested in this culture and interested in being a part of the team that turns this program around. Because until then, we have to be content with finishing top 20-ish. And don't get me wrong, for a while, I would be. That's way better than what Illinois is used to playing at. But long-term, just as I suspect all of you do, we want to be better. We want to be in contention for this Big Ten championship. The schedule worked out in our favor this year. You know, if you play teams like Oregon and Penn State, 2 of the 3 best teams in the conference, honestly, my opinion is you want to play them away, because more than likely, those are games that you're not going to win anyway. So I want to save the home games for the games that we can absolutely win. And win is something we can do. We have a chance still to go undefeated at home this year. That matters. That's very important. We have a very good Minnesota team, and we have an up and down Michigan State team. Those are the next 2 home games, which both, despite what the final scores of our respective games were this week, should be very, very competitive. Today's game, again, I keep repeating myself because I don't want you all to think that I'm making excuses for it. Today was a very bad game, and I wish we put up more of a fight on national TV, especially Illini Nation, especially when it comes to social media. We like to enjoy ourselves a bit and, get aggressive. And to be, I think Mike Carpenter said we were humbled a bit. I don't know if we were humbled a bit. I think if we took our Illinois hats off, our glasses off, we'd know that there's definitely a talent discrepancy. But when I say Oregon is a very good football team, I'm talking about arguably the best team in the country. I have YouTube TV, right? So I'm watching 4 games at a time. So I'm watching Texas's game at the moment as well, which, by the way, that game got close too. I don't know the final score of that one. I watched Georgia. I watched Ohio State. Who watched the Ohio State game today? They had a squeaker to get by Nebraska, and they were at home. Oregon, despite struggling the first couple of weeks, they've found their mojo. They're playing very, very well. And that Oregon team that played today, Illinois on their best day could not beat. And today, unfortunately, just wasn't their best day. The aforementioned Luke Altmyer, he struggled. We really couldn't get much of a running game going. We couldn't really get much of anything going. Our offensive line struggled. Our defensive line didn't put up much pressure. And quite honestly, I think this was one of Aaron Henry's poorer games. Now, if I showed my DMs there, I got a whole bunch of, is it time to fire Aaron Henry text? And I'm sure the chat, which I'll get to in a second, there's going to be a lot of that. Let's breathe for a second. And let's remember that Illinois had its arguably best defensive performance last week, just 1 week ago today, against the Michigan Wolverines. Is there a chance that we fall out of the top 25 now? I hope not. I think at 20, from what I was looking at, I was kind of scoreboard watching. The teams behind us also lost. And so now, granted, nothing we showed on the football field today really suggested that we should stay. But I think we're a top 25 team. I've said it. I think we're a top 20 team. I just think Oregon is very clearly number one. I think it's Oregon, and then there's some room before we talk about the Georgias, the Ohio States, and the Texases. There's a chance that we really went all in on that Michigan game. And that thought had crossed my mind. We had circled it. The players had talked about how important this game was for the program, but for Brett, Josh Whitman had made a huge deal out of it. Obviously, you saw all the stuff that the program, Josh Whitman, did outside the actual game. And there's a line of thinking saying that we left everything on the field in that game. And I'm just saying, again, this is me not defending Illinois. I'm saying I don't think that's the case at all. I think we simply just got outstarred. Dylan Gabriel, there's a reason he's one of the strongest contenders for winning that Heisman. Those 3 or 4 wide receivers that they have, I think Stewart only had 1 catch today. And that kid is a complete star. But we were simply just not good enough. And Oregon was too good. And all right, let's get to some of your comments right after this. All right, Mike says it could have been worse, Jason. This could have been Iowa 2018, but lucky Lanning called off the dogs a little bit. Yes, sure. I do think Oregon went a little bit more conservative in the second half, but it's not like Illinois really got all that extra aggressive in that second half either. I think Illinois kind of recognized that the following week's game is going to be a little bit more important. Fourth quarter, for some reason, we got a little bit more pass happy. It probably would have been nice to have started that in the third quarter. I think one of my biggest frustrations is Oregon outmans us at every single positional unit on that football field, except for wide receiver. And so I wish early in the game that we had been a little bit more aggressive trying to target Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant, because those guys make plays. And again, don't get me wrong, we tried to make some plays, but Luke Altmyer he was off. He missed a couple throws to Zachary in particular, and it just didn't work out. Speaking of, Caitlin says, we're lucky that Bryant was able to walk off with help. He was absolutely seeing stars. Yeah, I was saying at halftime that we see how this game is going. It's time to call off the dogs ourselves. Minnesota at the time was up 30-3. That game was more important. I didn't want to get anybody hurt. And I think pretty much immediately after that, Malik Elzy got hurt. Then Tyler Strain got hurt. Caleb Patterson got hurt. And I forget the player who got hurt at the end of the game. My apologies. But luckily, Malik Elzy came back at least. He's going to be a guy we need. Pat Bryant, of course, I didn't even mention him. That's going to be something to monitor. Was it a concussion? Concussion, he may not be playing next week. I've had a concussion before. I still suffer to this day some remnants of a concussion I had a year and a half ago. But we're going to need Pat Bryant because Minnesota looks really good. Speaking of, Jason says, Minnesota is not going to be as easy as Illini fans think. They're heating up at the right time and are strong where Illinois is weak. Yeah, Minnesota, the thing is, they're coming off a very dominant victory off of Maryland. And obviously we pulled off this stinker against Oregon. So if you believe in momentum, they have a lot of it, and we don't have much of it. But Brett Bielema has had success against Minnesota. I'm hoping that carries over. I'll be honest, if the game was in Minnesota, I would be less optimistic about it. But as down as I might feel today, I truly do think tomorrow morning when I wake up, I'll wipe this game from my memory and I'll look at that record at 6-2 and just move forward and start thinking about Minnesota and winning that game, because winning that game puts you at 7-2 and with 3 winnable games after that. Jason says, not disappointed at all. I expected this 6-2 and possibly to get 9 or 10 wins this year. ILL. Jason, appreciate you tuning in. Exactly. 6-2. When you sit back and look at it, it's still a really, really good record. I understand with the way the season has been going that we have higher aspirations at this point, that the season has been almost a tease. But when you step back, you got to keep things in perspective. It's unfortunate we lost this game, but most teams are going to lose to Oregon this year. Oregon has a chance to go undefeated this season, and that's including college football playoff and winning the national championship. So maybe looking back at the end of the year, this loss might not look as bad as it was today. Jason says the tickets for kids donations are going nuts. Started flooding my messages after the second quarter. Not ideal. I don't like to hear that, Jason. I'm glad what you do for these kids to be able to watch Illini games. I appreciate that. But of course, I want our fans to fill up that place. I really think that, having a good atmosphere against Minnesota, because again, guys, think about it. The recruits are there. The recruits are watching. There's been some fantastic articles at 24/7 lately where they talk about how a lot of these recruits who may not have considered Illinois in the past are now seeing that the program is turning around and that there's some serious potential here. And the best way to really win them over is not only what you see on the football field. Quite honestly, I'm confident in Brett Bielema and that coaching staff to take care of that part. But who doesn't want to play in a very good atmosphere when you're playing in college? It's one thing when you're visiting Champaign for a home game and then you're going to an SEC school where the place is sold out and, the fans are rabid. If all things else is 50-50, I would want to play where I feel like the atmosphere is more fun. And so my hope is that Illinois fans aren't giving up on the season after only their second loss. Second loss, might I add, in 8 games. Smoking Pipeliner says, seemed like Oregon had Illinois headset radio signals. Yeah, I agree. We really just did not get much done. Jason says, I'm ready for basketball, by the way. Let's go. You and I both, Jason. And again, if you're not a follower already to this channel, if this is the first time you're stumbling by, or even if you watched this a couple of times, make sure you are subscribed. Now that basketball season's here, you're going to get double the content. I already do a show daily. I might just knock it up to 2 episodes a day. And it's easy for me to do that. I was at 1,300 and 1,390 subscribers before this started. Let's get to 1,400. If you're excited for the basketball season, hit that like button right now and make sure you're subscribed. I'd really appreciate that. Jason correctly points out that Oregon's OC worked with Lunny at UTSA. Caitlin says, I had the same thought. It felt like the UConn game. Yeah, Caitlin, I saw that and I felt that in the first half. I kind of just sat back and watched. I was like, oh, this is different. This team, we're playing different sports at this point. Jason, everyday guy. I appreciate you, Jason. I know you are. And all your guys' support, I genuinely appreciate. Jason Ron says, you saw what Nike money gets you. The university needs to build on a golden statue and give him that stupid honorary doctorate he wanted. Yeah, what a weird story. Those of you who don't know about it, we'll get into that later. Jason Lynch, we got a lot of Jasons in this chat. This team is way off from contending. Need better players, bottom line, pay for players. Well, contending for what, Jason Lynch? I guess that's a question. Contending for a Big Ten title? Well, okay, I agree with you. We're not at the level of Ohio State, Oregon. Clearly, we're kind of close against Penn State, but obviously Penn State is a tier above. I don't know if we're way off from contending. I'll grant you we're not contending yet, and we have a ways to go. But I think the coaching is there. I think the players are solid, but solid is going to win you 8 games. solid with good coaching is going to win you 8, maybe 9 games on occasion. If we want to contend ultimately for a Big Ten title when it comes to football, we're going to have to step a few things up, and I think we're about to talk about it in a second. Jason Lynch also says Henry isn't a defensive coordinator for a good team. We need a guy with more experience. I know that's a very, very popular opinion right now. Jason Ron says, Brett said it this week, Illinois is the bottom quarter of NIL. Yeah, that's the other looming topic, right? The NIL. We're in the bottom quarter. I believe he said we're in the top half of the third, right? Obviously, that needs to step its game up. And Josh Whitman knows that. And that's also why these sellouts are important. That's a big way for this athletic department to make money. We have a sponsor here on the show, Roy, if you want to help with the NIL funds of particular NIL or Illinois players. But otherwise, you have Icon. Now, granted, I'm trying to be clear when I say this. If you don't have a disposable income or if you don't think fans should be in charge of this stuff, I totally get it. I'm not even remotely saying you need to. But what I am saying is if you do want to help this program grow, if you're going to sit here and complain about NIL, and Jason, I'm not saying you are, well, just make sure you're doing your part as well. Because NIL, the whole point of NIL is having everyone, and that includes this fan base, to help contribute Illinois make it to the next level. Illinois UConn game football style. Yeah, we pretty much just watched the same game. Joseph says can't cover 21-point spread, total frauds, and Aaron Henry is horrible. They will lose 2 more. Okay, Joseph's not having a very good day. I totally get it. Jason Rod says Mizzou lost 34-0. Hey, at least we scored. Gamer 26 says Minnesota won 48-23. Yeah, again, they're feeling good right now. Minnesota is going to be a really tough game next week, and that's why I was so insistent on benching some of our players in that second half, including I called for Leary to come in that second half because Luke Altmyer is so important to the rest of the season. And if it meant that we'd lose this game 63-3, I know it would have felt awful, but a 63-3 loss is the same as a 38-9 loss that we got here, or a 21-20 loss. A loss is a loss. Let's feel bad. Let's be emotional. Let's get everything out, but then forget it and move on. Jason Lynch says Luke's worst game because Oregon is awesome. 100%. Jason sees 0 positive in this game. I'm going to disagree with you there. I think Khalil Valentine showed some of the spark that Brett loves about him and what makes me think that he's a future star for the Illini. I wonder if he's hurt. He's been getting destroyed these last few weeks. It feels like I think you're talking about Luke Altmyer. Caitlin, that's a very good point. Something's going on. He's just off. His throws are off. I'm not saying this, if he had made his throws that we would have won today, I don't think any team would have beaten that Oregon team today, but that first half would have been a lot more respectable. Again, there's a missed touchdown that I can recall off the top of my head, and at least 2 passes to Zakari that just didn't quite make it. Jason Lynch, not very optimistic on what he saw today. He says, Luke isn't that good. OLDL and DC are not very good. Minnesota's secondary is good. And TM says, just like I predicted last week, Illinois was exposed. Okay. I know this is going to happen a lot. Get your emotions out. I get it. Oregon environment isn't any different than Penn State. Right. And he had a very, we were down by a score against Penn State with 2 minutes left. Luke Altmyer didn't have a very good game that game. But again, if you're asking me, do I think that Illinois should be beating teams like Oregon and Penn State half the time we play them, 5 out of 10 times? No, I don't think so. We're not there. We're not at that level yet. Our over-under this year was 5.5. We were projected to not even make a bowl game this year. I just feel like, and I understand why, Illinois fans are a very passionate bunch. We all are. But we have to keep things in perspective. Like there's steps to this. There's levels. Nobody goes from being a poor team and then immediately the next season need to or plan on contending for a national championship. Oregon didn't do that. And Oregon has 10 times the NIL we have. You go from a below average team to an average team to above average team to a very good team, and then you enjoy the elites. You might be able to shortcut and miss one of the tiers and jump one of the tiers, but Illinois was an average team at best last year. And this year, right now, we're 6-2. One loss depends on how long we have lost our starters for. Yeah, it was nice to see Malik Elzy come back. And I think they mentioned a couple of the other players. I don't want to speak for it. I don't know what's going to happen, with the rest. Again, some of you might be watching this post-game press conference, and you can let me know in the chat if Brett says anything about that. We'll be right back right after this. If you're not in the playoffs, all these dumb bowl games mean nothing. Again, Jason, I know you're in a mood, and so I'm going to respect that, but I disagree. I think at 10-2, if you're 10-2, you show that it brings a lot of money to this athletic program. Fans are excited. Our football fans, and let's be honest, tell me if you agree with me in the chat, we're very bandwagony. We're very hesitant to support this football team just because the football team hasn't supported us for a very, very long time. But if we're able to go 10-2, 9-3, 8-4, then 9-3, the support will come. The money will come. The NIL will come. And just as important, Memorial Stadium will start filling up. You said they need more talent, then it looks like they need more NIL money. 100%. That's what I was talking about. It's Illinois isn't where they need to be when it comes to NIL. We're not the worst, and we're in a better position than others, but obviously that's still a puzzle that we need to answer. 2 Illinois recruits were invited to today's game by Oregon. Good move by them. I think this Oregon team is beatable. I really don't think they are that good. Okay, I mean, I respect that opinion. I don't know if I agree. I've been watching a lot of the top teams over the last couple weeks, at least, probably the past month. And to me, Oregon just looks a little bit better, not a little bit better, better than the rest. Illinois, same crap every year until they start spending money on the football program, the bottom line. I mean, we're 6-2. Jason, I appreciate it. I know what you're saying, and I want you to get vent, and I want you to get your frustrations out. But we're 6-2 right now, and with a chance to win 8, 9, maybe even 10 games, I'm still optimistic. Illinois is ranked 18th in the 24/7 rankings of talent. That literally means Illinois has to punch up to every team they play in the Big Ten. Exactly right. That's what I'm saying. When you're the least talented team in the Big Ten, which, by the way, I'm not making excuses for. We should not be. And that's kind of the crux of what I've been trying to say all along is we saw plainly today why we need to upgrade the talent-wise if we ultimately want to compete for conference championships. But it's nice that we have a coaching staff in place that right now we're not losing games that we shouldn't be losing. And we're beating teams that may be even higher on the talent scale. Boys versus men, absolutely. Yeah, that was a tough out for the Illini. They're not ready yet. We're not ready for Oregon yet. T-Pain 213. I agree with you. We're not ready for the Oregons yet. And the good thing is we're not going to be playing a team like Oregon again this season unless it's in the college football playoff, and it won't be. I'm pretty sure like even Oregon will get a bye week, and if Illinois squeaks in, it's going to be one of the last spots, and we'd be playing like the fifth best team or sixth best team. Mark says, I think we got punked. We need to be much more physical. We just need to be much more talented, Mark. We missed tackles. It was just not a good game for Illinois. And again, the optimistic side of me wants to think that I'm grateful that we got the bad game out of the way today because more than likely we weren't going to win anyway. And hopefully we can watch some tape and be ready for a very hot Minnesota team next week. Cat Feline says, need to get rid of those wireless radio helmets. They're not secure. Just go back to using hand signals. That was a bad idea from the get-go. Smoking Pipeliner says, Indiana totally beats Oregon. I'm not going to say I agree with that, but we're all entitled to our opinions. Big Dog says 10-2. We're in. I don't know, Big Dog. We need to basically root for everybody on Indiana's schedule to beat them, because you figure they'll probably lose to Ohio State, but who knows now? I've been an proclaimed Indiana hater all season long, but at this point, I have no choice but to be quiet. After that beatdown they put against Nebraska, and now with their backup quarterback beating Washington today, I got to watch that game at 11. Indiana very well might be for real, and I will tell you that there's no way that Illinois at 10-2 would leapfrog Indiana if they ended up being 11-1. If Oregon and Penn State finish 1-2 in the AP poll, we're getting in at 10-2. At least we don't try to hurt people like Oregon. That's what Mike said. Yeah, that was tough. And I'm surprised that the referees took that call back. Pat Bryant was, to me, I think that was textbook targeting. Was it on purpose? Maybe not that play, but I'm really shocked. Bill is echoing my point. If you told the Illini fans we would be 6-2 after this Oregon game, 100% of you in this chat would have taken it. 99.9% of the people, of the Illini fans would watch it. And the 0.1% who wouldn't take that, well, there's no saving them anyway. Mike says, do you think that Illinois can beat the Golden Gophers? Absolutely, I do. Minnesota's good, but again, I'm not going to let this loss against the best team in the country tell me that Illinois is bad. I think we're going to be favored, and I'm hoping Pat Bryant is healthy. If Pat Bryant's able to play, I'm going into next week's game thinking we can win that game. Now, if we put on another performance like we did today against Minnesota next week at home, I promise you my tone will change. I know some people get upset that I choose to remain optimistic, but it's because I think I'm looking at things from the big picture. That Purdue game ultimately was a win. I know we were all upset after that second half, but a win is a win is a win. And this game, which was our worst loss, but it was against the best team in the country. Zara says, I stopped watching at 28-3. I wish I could have, but I knew I was going to come on here with you guys, so I have to watch every single game, which I will all season long, and jump on here with you guys afterwards. Hopefully Bryant can play against Minnesota. Yeah, we're going to absolutely need him, though I really do like what I see from Colin Dixon. Even when Pat Bryant went out today, Colin Dixon had a couple catches, and man, that Oregon, wasn't number 13, made some really nice interceptions, like getting his hands up as quickly as he did. Again, that looks like NFL talent for me. Barna, I believe Caitlin says, I think she's answering the question about who is the kid who got hurt at the end. Again, I don't have any updates yet. Hopefully we'll get updates by the time I next record. If we can keep Colin Dixon around for 4 years, he's going to be a problem. He's going to be a problem. And you guys, Malik Elzy is going to be a problem too. You know, one of the best parts about Pat Bryant is not only is he a great wide receiver, but he's worked at like his blocking every single year. I'm not kidding. When you watch the All-22s, which I do every Sunday night, Pat Bryant is as good of a blocking wide receiver I've seen in an Illinois uniform, at least in the last 4 or 5 years. And Malik Elzy right now, he is a plus blocker. And you can't teach that. That's something you want to learn how to do. And that tells me that Pat Bryant, Zachary Franklin, those are good influences on a guy like Malik Elzy. And look, when Pat graduates next year, and hopefully he makes it to the NFL, I truly do think Malik Elzy can step right into that spot. Bielema said in the presser that he doesn't think anything is season ending, but has no updates until Monday. Fair enough. Thanks, Jason Ron, for that. And Mike also says Oregon was trying to hurt people. And Big Dog says we should be 4-4 at best, right? This is gravy. Yeah, sure. I get what you're saying, but 6-2, 6-2. I'm going to remain optimistic. Again, I'm going to be upset today. I'm going to be bummed out today, but tomorrow I'm moving on from this game. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be watching the Illinois Ole Miss exhibition game. I'll do a live stream immediately afterwards. By the way, again, I'm going to mention again, if you're not a subscriber already, I come on here. Please, guys, my everydayers in the chat, let them know that I'm on here every single day giving Illinois content for you guys, and that will double up now that we have basketball season. So tomorrow I'll also be doing these post-game shows. James gets it. Flush this one. You lost on the road to number 1. Please, Aaron Henry, no more 3-man rush. Yeah, that was bad. We got exposed there for sure. We just couldn't get to Dylan. I think it might take a while for the basketball team to click. A bunch of new players. We're probably going to struggle early. Yeah, Gamer, we'll talk a little bit more basketball on tomorrow's show. Sam says he's impressed with Illinois' effort in the second half. Go 10-2, 9-3, and the boosters might show up. And that was a Ducks fan. See, Sam, I appreciate you for that feedback. I love getting feedback from opposing fan bases. And one of the cool things about this job that I have now is that I'm just a couple texts away from finding out what the opposing insider thinks of Illinois after every single game. So, because I know you guys, myself, we're all biased and we look things through a particular lens, but we don't always have to. It's nice to get an outsider's perspective every now and then. Second. All right, where are we at? Check it out. It says we learned there are at least 2 tiers of talent in the Big Ten. Illinois is not top tier. Again, check it out, and I appreciate you. You're also one of the folks who are commenting every single day. Talent-wise, 100%. Talent, I don't know if we're at the top, but I think we're very well coached. And again, if you change that statement to 2 tiers of teams in the Big Ten, Illinois is absolutely in the top. I think we're a very well-coached team. I like our football team, and I'm not going to let this game make me feel worse about it. And I truly think that just remember the vibes we had after that Michigan game last week, guys. We were, 6-point dogs in that game. A bunch of you joined me for that game, and we were celebrating. It was a game that, we all were excited for. And we had a 21-7 victory where we didn't even play very well. And so just like I'm not going to let myself get too high on that game, I'm not going to let myself get too low on this game. I'm going to continue to try to keep things in perspective when it comes to a season as a whole. Arthur says, bad games in the books. Time to focus on the next 4 and win out. ILL. Arthur, I appreciate that. Oregon is number 1 for a reason, says RB. 100% agree. And we saw that reason up close today. James says to Jason Lynch, you're wrong. A bowl gives you an extra game and 3 weeks of extra practices, which is invaluable. Absolutely, it's invaluable, especially for those young players because, that Malik Elzy that I just mentioned, Colin Dixon we talked about, those guys who are going to be potentially stepping into starting roles next year, they get those extra practices, and the coaches get to work on those development of those young players. So 100% bowl games are very, very important. College football playoff, in particular, a January game. If we can get a January game, I will automatically say at my end of season recap, this season was an A. And I don't think anyone can say otherwise. Check it out. It says it's a multi-year task to improve a football team. I like our coaching staff. On the other hand, IU did it much quicker. Sure, but let's see IU sustain this, right? I mean, Kansas came out right shooting out of a cannon too once they hired Leipold. But does Cignetti even stay another year? Right now, if I'm Auburn, if I'm North Carolina, heck, if I'm Ohio State or USC, I really consider making a Godfather offer to Cignetti and making him say no. RB says, Hope Bryant is okay. He's a stud. Man, some of the catches, and even that one that got called back for not being a catch, just shows you how foolish I was to question whether he was ready to be wide receiver 1 at the beginning of the year. Jason Ron agrees that he thinks that Indiana can beat Ohio State. Lee doesn't like it when I say this before either. Quit all the playoff talk for Christ's sake. One game at a time, beat Minnesota. Lee, of course. No, I get it. I'm not saying we're going to make the playoffs, but I'm just saying when you look at it big picture wise, that's all I'm here for. I'm here for the conversation. 100%. Focus week by week. And you know what? The football players, that's what they're doing. Brett Bielema, that's what he's got that locker room thinking about. They've got them thinking about Minnesota. We are just fans, right? We're just a collective, and we talk about Illinois sports. And I'm basically just trying to talk people off the edge right now. RB says, hate to disagree, but it was not targeting on Bryant and clearly not intentional. RB, I agree with you. It was not intentional, unless you're talking to someone else. But I do think it was targeting. Check it out. It says, we are in the middle of a great season for Illini fans. We did beat Michigan. And Lee still does not like that I talk about playoffs. I apologize, Lee. Happy Hermit says, keep building on the season by winning 3 of the next 4. We were picked to win 4 or 5 games. It's all gravy now. I'm not going to say it's all gravy now, Happy Hermit, but I do understand your ultimate point. If all of a sudden we finish the season 6-6, it's certainly not all gravy. I think if we finish the season 7-5, some of us will be a little bit disappointed. But in my opinion, if we can get to 8 wins, which I think we can get, that's at the very least the baseline. Bob says, you can tell Bielema can motivate his players. I was hoping Oregon could send Novosad or Moore in a little earlier, but Illinois never quit. 100%. I'm going to talk about that next week in one of the episodes. The team didn't quit in the second half. And I know a lot of you are going to say that I wish that they had, said something along the lines of we embarrassed ourselves in the first half or this or that. I get it. But if we played like that in the second half and we lost this game 64-6 or whatever it was, you guys would have been all over them, right? So the fact that Illinois did continue trying, did continue playing, it matters. A lot, no, but it's something I did notice. It's going to be hard to win out. Minnesota and Michigan State have been playing well. Glad we have them both at home. This is still a great year. Absolutely. Minnesota, Michigan State playing a lot better. Rutgers seems to have fallen off a little bit. So hopefully it's nice that we had that game away. Usually you don't want to play a stronger team who's really feeling it. Got a lot of momentum going their way at home, but looks like Rutgers is struggling. So maybe that's a victory, and we better beat Northwestern. That's all I'm going to say. By the way, I'm going to try to be at that game. So I still got to figure out the ticket situation. But if any of you guys are going to be in Chicago for that Northwestern game, let me know. And I'd love to organize a little Locked On Illini, maybe group meetup right before. Alexander says, I love you, Sonny. Alex, I love you too. And if you want to check out Alex's work, go to armchairillini.com. They do absolutely fantastic content over there. Jason says, Minnesota and Michigan State are 50-50 games. Win one of those and take care of severely injured Rutgers team and take back the hat. Right on, Jason. I agree with you. Lee says, it's all good. I just hope we get to a bowl in Florida or New Orleans. I'll be there. Texas, not so much. Sorry. Lee, you got nothing to say sorry for. We're all fans here. We are all able to have our own opinions. Again, I know a lot of you don't like that I choose to point out the optimistic portions. But trust me, if you're like me, I know I'm probably not the only show you guys listen to. All the other guys, you're going to hear something a little bit more somber and something not quite as optimistic. I'm not saying they're right. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just telling you how I want to view things and what lens I want to look at things from. Ultimately, I still feel positive about the ceiling of this team. And I apologize, Lee. I just understand that there is a potential playoff or even, again, a 9-3 season. Let's just play in January, guys. Let's play in January. Send off Pat Bryant and some of these seniors, with a big victory, and let's get to double digits. I'm going to wrap it up for today. Again, I appreciate all of you guys joining. Again, please, it costs you guys nothing. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're interested in doing watch parties, consider joining that subtext group that's going to be in the description. It's a way for you to, if you do want to in any sort of way financially support the program, you can do it that way. I'm not asking for it. It's not a big deal. The only support I ask for is to share this with all your Illinois friends. Let's continue to make this channel grow. this channel's 6 months old, and we're already the second biggest Illini channel out there. And we have a ways to catch up to number one, but it's fine. I'm all here to provide content from you guys because of the support I get from you guys. That's gonna wrap it up for today. I'll see you guys tomorrow after the Ole Miss game. ILL, love you guys.